Welcome to another episode of Bulls, Bears, and Blockchain on Revolution Radio, making smarter financial decisions with your host, Rob Nelson, former Fox News host and anchor at Roundtable Media with his team of market masters, Marc LoPresti, Managing Director of Moneta Advisory Partners, co-founder of Battlefin, leading data platform, and a former institutional equities trader at Lehman Brothers, Alex Mascioli, founder of Trade the Chain, former head of institutional prime brokerage at Bquant, John Najarian, co-founder of Market Rebellion, former co-host of Halftime Report on CNBC, and co-founder of Option Monster and Trade Monster. Daily data insights and ticker updates direct from three of the world's top TradFi, legal, and crypto experts on Bulls, Bears, and Blockchain every Monday and Friday on all your favorite platforms. Let's get started.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Wherever you are, whatever time zone it is for you, you're listening to Revolution Radio's Bulls, Bears, and Blockchain. I'm your host, Rob Nelson, and I've got my team of market masters, John Najarian, Marc LoPresti, and Alex Mascioli, giving you their expert advice and insights on everything TradFi, DeFi, legal, and crypto. Guys, always good to be with you. Let's get this thing started. Today, Dr. J is not with us. He is on a plane to like Vienna for Mardi Gras. But we have a special guest, Anthony Scaramucci, a market master for sure. So you fit right in with us, Anthony. We're going to let you kind of play John's role today. You can feel free to comment on the picks these guys have done. But then we're going to spend a big chunk of the show just doing almost like a fireside chat with you. Let people who listen, hear who you are and what you're about. I mean, your name's well known. You're one of the few guys who's known across the spectrum. You're known by people in mainstream who saw you in the political side, and you're well known in the finance world. So really good to have you with us today.
It's good to be here, guys. Thanks for having me.
So let's jump in, and everybody, as usual, it's free for all. I'm just guiding the ship here. You guys are the power behind it. But I want to start recapping a couple things that happened last week. I gotta start with Marc. We're skipping John because he's not here, although he did have a good pick, a good option. Marc, you called Airbnb. And a lot of people thought Airbnb would do okay, but you even said on our Monday show, people are not seeing how good this is going to be. And you had some of your alt data points in there that helped you identify why. And then yesterday, everybody, CNBC is like, wow, Airbnb outperformed even what the analysts thought. And I'm like, except for Marc.
Thanks, Rob. We're definitely proud of this one, obviously. I think from where I called it on Monday, people that I get into this thing are up like 23%. John and I were coming up with some creative call option trades on this thing that delivered even more. I won't say because the numbers are obnoxious. But, yeah, look, this is an example of how we use alternative data to either verify, refute, or come up with our own opinion as it relates to how we think these equity names are going to perform. And the travel sector overall, and we've talked about this on other shows and I've talked about this on other broadcasts that I do regularly, the travel sector has completely exceeded my expectations. The consumer demand for travel has completely exceeded my expectations and analyst expectations. And we look at things like geolocation, sentiment around data and travel names, credit card receipt data, along with a superior business model for Airbnb, because two things, Rob. They cut out the middleman. Most people, 90-something% of the user base, could be 80-something, I don't remember precisely, go direct. They don't go through Expedia. They don't go through any of those travel intermediary websites. They go right to Airbnb. So Airbnb captures all that spread that all of the other hotels and travel names typically give up to the Expedias of the world. That's number one. Number two, they actually benefit from a rising rate environment because they collect that money and make money on a higher interest rate between the renter of the property and the owner of the property for sometimes as much as 2 weeks. So look, did I expect that our investors were going to have a 23+% return on this pick? No, the return on this even exceeded my expectation. We took profit, came out of the name yesterday, just to put that on the record. After a run up like that, you got to take profits. But we love how Airbnb performed.
Yeah, and you were talking about it on Rebel's Edge with John on your show this morning, and appreciate the shout out to Bulls, Bears, and Blockchain. Shout out right back to Market Rebellion. Great show. John and Pete do it, and Marc often sits in for Pete. Anthony, let me ask you. Marc and I have talked about this. We've been talking about it earlier today. The idea that there's underlying data points, like Marc's referring to, we call them the alt data, that actually often many in the market miss. And I know you're an investor in Battlefin. And I think for a lot of investors out there, they don't understand the value of these alt data points and even how an average investor could utilize them.
Well, I mean, there's a lot going on underneath the surface of the market. They sometimes say about Washington that you don't want to see the sausage being made, the actual legislation, because you'll be turned off by it. I think there's things that go on in the markets. You guys know, and I know, that those types of things can be early indicators. And what I applaud about what Marc and John are capable of doing is they are experienced hands. I mean, those indicators probably work 8 out of 10, sometimes 9 out of 10. When they don't work, they don't throw out the whole idea of it. And so I think it's important for people to recognize that something may work high percentage wise, but it doesn't necessarily have to work every single time for you to be a real winner in the marketplace. But just one macro piece before I turn it back to you guys that we look at here is the break-even number on the 10-year treasury. So if you go to the tips, the 10-year tips, and you look at the break-even number, that's basically what the market is suggesting that inflation will be over the next 10 years. That average number, that's at about 2.33%. That's down from 3.1 last year. And as it trends towards 2%, the warning light has to go on at the Fed because they do not want to set off, God forbid, a deflationary spiral. They actually, the dirty secret that we all know is they actually need the inflation because they need to monetize some of the unbelievable amounts of deficit spending that we're embarking upon. So look at that number. I really do believe that the market is up a lot this year because the bond market is telling you that the Fed is running out of room to raise rates.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, Anthony. And we actually talked about that briefly on Monday's show, that the bond market is telling a story that's very different from what the equity market is telling. And we feel that that's a very strong indicator as well.
So yeah, I think these underlying data points, Marc, you talk about cost of acquiring customers. There's so many things that play in that people don't see. And it's interesting, shifting to Alex a little in the crypto space. And by the way, Alex, you picked OP, which did great. And full disclosure, you got out of that trade, took a nice profit. You also doubled down on Ethereum, which had a big boost, and I want you to talk about that and the crypto market space in general. But to me, crypto, you have to look at so many other data points that you don't always have to look at in TradFi. It's almost like a different kind of market space in certain ways.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we're being blessed with, or we were blessed with a short, really good market rally in Bitcoin leading up to a 10% day, hitting 25,000. That really, drove sentiment up a lot. But to your point, it is about data. And that's why Trade the Chain, we use AI to track sentiment data for entry and exit points on individual crypto tickers. But Optimism ticker OP, which is a layer 2 blockchain on top of the Ethereum blockchain, I've been trading in and out of this for the last couple of months pretty heavily. We've talked about it on the show previously, up 30% in the last swing. It really had a great run up. It's down minus 2.6% on the day, and it's down to plus 50% for the month. So I think my exit on that was pretty well timed. It didn't have any certain skill set to my own trading capability, with the exception I followed the sentiment. And when the sentiment started to dip, it brought, Bitcoin was going down, Ethereum sentiment's pretty low. Then OP sentiment started diving. And I said, listen, I'm going to take profit. If I leave money on the table, who cares? At least I have something to show my wife. But yeah, no, it was a great trade. I really love it. It's the second time we've called it on this show and taken a lot of profit off it.
That's awesome. I wanna talk. I want to focus, Anthony, a lot of our conversation with you on the crypto space. And Alex, again, you took Ethereum. We're seeing a boost in Bitcoin, but this is like well, I'm gonna see the fireside chat part of this. So for people who are tuning in or checking part of this out on our website is just this part of the interview. I just want to reintroduce Anthony Scaramucci joining us here on Bulls, Bears, and Blockchain. You are known, well, Worth Magazine named you a few years back one of the 10 most powerful people in global finance. You started Skybridge Capital. You came out of Goldman Sachs. You have been a market maker for a long time. Also, an entertainment guy. At podcasts, you got a new podcast out, Open Book, which I want to promote and have people tune into. And you also, come out, you did the politics too, walk the walk in the political world, both behind the scenes and very famously in front of the scenes. We'll talk about that a little farther. Go ahead.
Also famously fired. You see that? So, I mean, as a good entrepreneur, after you've had a couple setbacks, you let these things roll off of you. I was just looking at OP and Alex's comments and Ethereum, and I think you guys also are looking at some of these AI-based protocols, whether it's Fetch.ai, Filecoin. The future is on us. Now I'm not saying that we're not going to see a swoon. I don't see a 45-degree straight line up in crypto from here, but I do think there's big reasons why this stuff is up a lot. We believe the rumors are out there, but I'm pretty confident that this rumor is true, that by June 1st, the Hong Kong government is opening in the cryptocurrency space, going to allow for trading, mining, staking, some of the things that Gary Gensler doesn't want to have happen in the world's largest economy is about to happen in the world's second largest economy. And I think you're seeing the effects of that broad-based in the market. Moreover, the Wall Street Journal is reporting this, and I have some sources of my own, so I do believe this to be true, that CZ is about to pay a fine to U.S. regulators. So there won't be any criminality or anything like that. He's done a great job of airtighting his business. Not really a word, but I'm making words up like George W. Bush. And he's making it regulatorily tight. And he's now going to pay a fine and keep that business going and running. That's going to take another big piece of FUD off the table. So I like what Alex is saying. I'm sure I would love to ask Alex a question. It's cool.
Ask away. It's open forum here.
Where do you think things are for the year? I'm sure there's going to be a zig and a zag. Do you think this is a bull trap in a bear market? Do you think this is a renewed bull market? Or where do you see things going over the course of the year?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a zigzag for sure. I think this possibly is probably a bull trap, but I think for the end of the year mark, we're going to be up. I think we're rebuilding right now, and Gensler is throwing a lot of regulatory enforcement our way. What you said about CZ is spot on. I know he's in the middle of a bid for a Canadian public company right now in crypto. There's a lot of headwinds, and we're getting everything thrown at us. But the market now, after all of the 2022 FUD and bankruptcies that happened, we're beginning to absorb it. We're beginning to have a flight to quality in crypto. And I think that's what this year is going to define. It's going to be the flight to quality.
Well, the two things. One, Alex, that was Anthony that asked you that question. I know it's hard to keep these good-looking Italians, to know them apart. But that question came from Mr. Scaramucci, not from me. But I'm happy to take credit for it because it was a good one. But the other thing I want to point out, guys, is literally as we were going on air, the SEC announced bringing a massive civil fraud case against Do Kwon and the whole Terra situation. We have no word from the Justice Department if there is going to be a corresponding criminal case, although I would be surprised if there was not, because if you looked at what the SEC is alleging in their civil case, it has a lot of the traditional elements of fraud, although the SEC also claiming, in addition to traditional sort of 10b5 type fraud claims, the illicit and unregistered offering of a security. So I'm going to be very curious to see how the market absorbs this. Bitcoin, while we're talking, actually up 60 basis points to 28,387. So, it's obviously absorbing the news and taking it in stride, although this literally broke in the last 15 minutes. But, Anthony, one of the things I wanted to ask you is, how has this clear path from Gensler of regulation through enforcement, which is the absolute wrong way to go about regulating any market or any industry, but how is that informing professional investors in this space? I mean, you're one of the best known pros in crypto. How does the SEC's approach impact your decision making, and what kind of new protocols, what kind of companies you want to put your money and Scarbage's money behind?
Mark, the short answer for us, it's having no impact. Yes, it's creating volatility. It's amping up the FUD. It's going to create probably more zigs and zags like Alex is suggesting. But unfortunately for Gary Gensler, this is a decentralized system and a decentralized marketplace. And there are very smart people around the world that want to regulate it more fairly. That would include Canada, the EU. Now it looks like China. You and I both know, because we study this stuff, the lack of banking. The great masses are unbanked. We're talking about billions of people in Africa, parts of East Asia, parts of Latin America are completely unbanked, and they also don't trust their currency. And this is the first currency, probably dating back to the Ming Dynasty, but this is the first currency where you can get the currency where it's not backed by violence and an army, but it's actually backed by this wonderful decentralized, trustless protocol. So even though Gensler is giving it a hard time, and I guess he's the wicked stepson of Charlie Munger, probably there's probably DNA in those two people. I'm not really that worried about it, and I think he's going to get obliterated here. There's a presidential election coming. There's about 80 million people that own a token in the United States. They're going to be voting with their wallets. This is going to be a very big issue in the presidential campaign. You guys probably don't want to talk politics, but let me just let you know, Donald Trump really hurt us because, you got Fetterman in Pennsylvania because of Trump. You got Warnock in Atlanta because of Trump. And you had a situation here where moderate Republicans could have won in many of those states. And we'd be well on our way to better foresight and clarity in the cryptocurrency markets and the regulation. But not going to matter long term, frankly.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. And we'll mix politics and business all into this. But I actually talked to David McIntosh the other day, the head of the Club for Growth. And they are so anti, he is so clearly drawing that dividing line, saying just what you're saying, like Trump poisoned us on these key candidates. And we have a very smart, conservative economic strategy that we think will work. We're going to get more candidates in who can do that, right? They're not going to have anybody challenging him in the open primary. So I think there's a movement here, legislators too.
You probably don't want me to go ad hominem on Gary, though. Do you? Or can I go a little ad
Yes, go ad hominem on Gary.
I mean, if you look like Jiminy Cricket, from the first Pinocchio movie, if you really were going through life looking like Jiminy Cricket, you'd want to inflict a lot of damage on us good-looking people, don't you think? I think you would, and I think that's what's going on.
We have to have him on this show and let him take on a roundtable with us.
I mean, come on, man. Come on.
He's got it. He's a kid who was shoved in the garbage can.
Very safely ensconced in Puerto Rico. He's laughing. He's like, all right, there's going to be like a SEC guided missile into my office here in a few seconds. I mean, come on. Poor guy,
How much of this, if you go back with the internet, remember when they originally they were starting to try to ban what they called net commerce? Like, if you go back, they're always a step behind. I mean, maybe Anthony, to your point, that time is going to push past this. There is no wiping this out as an emerging asset class any more than there was wiping out, internet commerce and what happened in Web 1 and then Web 2. It's almost like an unstoppable thing. The question is just how much damage can the regulators do along the way? Because I'd agree with you, sooner or later, Charlie Munger can say you should ban crypto, but the reality is, it's an emerging asset class, and the blockchain technologies for Web3 are absolutely going to change things. So combined, it's just not going away.
So again, I don't want to dominate this, and I apologize, but just trust me. I got an 11-day PhD in Washington. Okay, after they fired my you-know-what, I got a really quick understanding of what goes on. Follow the money. The money center banks and the lobbying stole rules to roost in Washington. And so they will do everything they can to delay this great transformation because it knocks out their profit cycle. But very shortly, this stuff will be in the forefront because it's unavoidable. If you have a better product, the product gets adopted. If the horseless carriage is better than the horse and carriage, it gets adopted, even if people don't want it to happen.
Yeah, good point. Go ahead, Marc.
You know what, Anthony? That's part of why, and we talked about this on our show on Monday, Rob, and we've talked about this on countless other broadcasts, podcasts, radio shows, TV, you name it. But I've been saying this for 2 years now. The first thing when the SEC got around to it that they were going to go after is staking platforms, because that looks a little bit too much like the regulated certificates of deposit or other things that are within the control of the Treasury and the banking system as currently controlled by the government, for the same exact reasons as Anthony said, follow the money, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why we saw, and people misunderstand this. People say, oh, with the SEC's settlement with Kraken, they took down staking. Well, no, they didn't, right? What they got Kraken to do was to agree to settle on other unregistered security violations and things of that nature, and to include in there, oh, by the way, we also want you to get rid of your staking business as a means to send a warning shot, a very clear signal to the entire industry in the United States here, and staking that if you continue with this business, be on notice, we're coming for you, so you may want to start taking action now. That's what happened with the Kraken case.
Right, but let me bring Alex into this, because we were talking earlier, and I think maybe Alex dug underneath a little further. And Alex, in your opinion, we all kind of got that staking decision wrong. Not that it's good, not that it isn't bad, but it's not as bad as we may have thought. Still bad, to Marc's point. Still them trying to make the point, but not definitely putting a knife through staking.
No, I mean, listen, there was a lot of panic on the streets. Last Friday, I was down at Najarian, sitting in this pool drinking too much rum. I heard the noise and I freaked out. I said, wow, staking, this is blasphemy. So I dug a little deeper, and what happened is, and I had it wrong when I commented on it, it wasn't exactly correct. It's the fact that when what happened to Kraken, and why Jesse Powell, who the founder and the former CEO, is so upset, is that they were adding. So when a counterparty adds tokens to your token, so let's say you hold XYZ, and Kraken says, oh, we're going to give you 5%, and they give you 5%, that is where the SEC got really upset. I thought it was for the smart contract staking, and I'll just get to that in a moment. But what this was is they were after him for unregistered securities, because they believe if you are physically giving that 5% return, and let's say it's from borrow lend arbitrage or any sort of money making scheme, that you're offering an unregistered security right there, and they called it staking. What the cross up got to be is that some contracts, let's say XYZ, may have 5% staking within their token. So if you put the token into a staking wallet, it automatically generates 5% return from the code written into that smart contract. This is not that. They're not coming after smart contract code written in staking. They're coming after counterparties providing a yield, and they called it staking. And by doing so, that is what Kraken was doing in violation of an unregistered security.
You get the details on bulls, bears, and blockchain. It's a significant distinction, though. Still not a good thing, but it is not as bad as you thought on Monday, or as
it's not as bad. It's not. I thought the world was ending Monday.
I don't know, Alex. I think it's pretty bad. I still think it's pretty bad.
Well, I guarantee you, anybody who's serious in crypto in the next 5 years, if the cryptocurrency atmosphere and environment is hugely successful, is going to start leaving the United States. I believe that under the current regime, it is so oppressive. We're losing legs in innovation. It really, it's a horrible experience at this point. I've been in this game for quite some time now.
Well, no, I agree, but I think that I like to think one of the good things about the country is the turnover of elites at the top. I think that they're going to get ousted. I don't think Gensler makes it to a second Joe Biden term, assuming that Biden gets reelected. And if he doesn't get reelected, somebody like Ron DeSantis would put somebody in there that I think is more favorable to it because he's not stupid. Trump hates crypto. So I don't like the idea of President Trump specifically for many reasons, but the crypto thing, he hates it. So he's not my guy. But DeSantis, Pompeo, any of these guys that have any policy wonkishness to their personalities know that if you want to maintain the mantle of U.S. financial services leadership, you got to have a fair regulatory rubric around the cryptocurrency space.
And whether we have that or not, that's going to hopefully emerge. But probably it can't be the CFTC and the SEC. People talk about having some kind of a
they can't agree on which one of them is going to run the show. So we're still talking about the battle between the SEC and the CFTC.
Well, and Treasury, right? It's not just those two, acronym agencies. There's others. And look, the idea that we're going to create another agency specifically for crypto, even under a DeSantis administration, I think it's far-fetched. I think what we need is for the agencies we have to take the effing time to create regulation and guidance, right? Not regulation through enforcement. You can't tell people or not tell people what the rules are of the game, and then when people get on the field and play the game, and then you penalize them. And you can't just point back to the 33 and the 34 Act. I don't mean to put my lawyer hat back on. I do that rarely these days. But I'm sorry, that shit's 100 years old, okay? It is not consistent with what this current technology is doing.
You're right. I know I'm gonna leave it short because I know you want to ask Anthony all the important questions. But moving forward, this is going to have to be clarity from the government, and it should be, I believe, at this point, an SRO created by the Brian Armstrongs or the Jesse Powells of the world.
I'm going to ask you each a quick question. It's the same one, and Alex, I'm going to start with you because you're just as important to me in my heart. Is when we talk about Gensler and the SEC and all that, and maybe he was the kid who got shoved in the trash cans in high school and has a vendetta, but how much of this is just incompetence and not understanding the space, and then reacting, an FTX, so they react to the retail market versus an intentional, we want to put to Anthony's point before, the big institutional guys maybe don't want crypto to survive.
Well, I'm going to say 100% at face value because I've seen things come and go and things change so rapidly in government since 2016, 2017. But if you dig deeper, and I would love for Anthony's thoughts on this, who knows? It could be a conspiracy theory. Who knows if SPF was a plan to ruin it, and now they're just backstepping.
Okay, let's go there.
No, I mean, listen, I don't know. I looked into a lot of interesting things when I was in the government, because you hear all these conspiracies and all this different stuff, and you guys are not going to be happy with me telling you this, that it is really hard to keep a secret, and it's really hard to clamp down a conspiracy, especially in this age of like microjournalism and people telling their mother's, sister's, aunt's, niece information that's actually classified. So it's really, really hard to keep conspiracies. But I do wonder about Sam in the following respect. As we're speaking, Sam is before the judge, Judge Kaplan, who's a very tough judge here in New York, and he is violating his bail terms. He is using a VPN to watch the Super Bowl. He's contacting and manipulating potential witnesses. He's on Signal and WhatsApp, two encrypted sites that he's not supposed to be on. And by anybody's measure, he's violated the bail agreement associated with the federal government. And so if he was a black kid in the Bronx or in Harlem that violated the bail agreement to the egregious nature that he's violated it, they would revoke the bail and put the person in the slammer. But he was told this afternoon, okay, no problem. We're going to slap you on the wrist here, and maybe we'll revoke it at some time in the future if you continue to violate the agreement. So I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but one has to wonder why the justice is meted out so injudiciously pursuant to each individual in terms of what they end up doing. I don't get it. So maybe there's something more to it. He did give hundreds of millions of dollars away, not just to Democrats, but also to Republicans. And many of them are now trying to say, oh, he didn't give it to me, or it went to a PAC, or this, that, or the other thing, because they don't want to pay it back. And so
Interesting.
It'll be interesting to see how this thing unfolds.
Some of that's true, though, Anth, right? Like especially at that size, the only way that some of these people that Sam could have given donations of that size are through PACs, and in a lot of instances, the candidate would not.
Yeah, no. I'm with you on that, but trust me, he gave a lot of money in the micro dosing that you can give to the campaigns, and way more money in the PACs, but they want to bury that to the extent that they can. And putting him in jail, I think maybe there's a fear that he's going to be raising a lot of these issues that they don't want raised. And so again, I'm not saying it's a conspiracy, but there seems to be some type of interest or motivation to treat him more favorably than you would treat a standard garden variety indicted person.
It's totally true.
Grossly violated the agreement in the bail contract.
Yeah, and needed a VPN to watch something that his parents, I'm sure, had on Fox in their living room. But to the point of the conspiracy thing, right? I mean, just because people call it a conspiracy theory doesn't mean there isn't underlying truth in it. It may actually, a lot of it may be true. I mean, I love telling people a lot of relationships with the Kennedys, and every member of the Kennedy family, believed that it was multiple people committed the assassination of John F. Kennedy. It was a conspiracy theory until people said, hey, these facts add up. So just because it sounds like it's fishy doesn't mean it's not real. It doesn't mean some of this isn't going on.
You're going to find out someday, but not in our lifetime, who killed Kennedy, because I was there when Trump made the decision to seal those documents. And after reading the documents, I was like, there's no way that they're going to let this information out. And moreover, Joe Biden did the same thing. He sealed the documents. Okay, so it'll eventually come out, but it'll be long after every single person on this radio cast is dead.
Yep, exactly.
Ain't coming out anytime soon.
No, and actually, Joe Kennedy, the oldest son of Bobby Kennedy, who was a congressman at the time, said something similar. I said, why don't you guys make more out of it if you all think? And he's like, because the truth will never come out. They'll never let the truth out.
Not coming out.
So let's talk for a second, Anthony, about politics, just for a minute. You did have a very famous 11-day tenure as communications director, and you even got
thanks for saying that it was 11 days. Some people say 10, and it hurts my feelings. I mean, I don't like being gypped out of like 9% of my federal career. So I do appreciate you officially scoring the problem.
The technical definition, though, is one Scaramucci. So that's
one Scaramucci.
There you go.
There are 10 letters in my name, but 11 days in my federal career.
Make this Scaramucci.
Let's not forget.
Listen, I will say for the record, at the time when you first got the job, and full disclosure, I worked in politics and I worked for Bill Clinton when I was in law school, and it was very close inside the White House. And famously had the president point his finger in my face in his living room and say, just because I'm president, Rob, doesn't mean I can do anything I want. It's not that simple. To which I've always acknowledged it's far more complex. Yet on the surface, Anthony, and you were inside that web, but to the public, our leaders do matter. And in the market space, confidence does matter. For whatever reason, Trump created a confidence in the market space that may have had to do with certain policies, tax cuts, may have had to do with something else. Joe Biden does not exude confidence, whether for whatever reason, he doesn't make people feel super confident right now. And I think when we look at candidates going forward, what candidates do you think might be able to best create that? And am I wrong in suggesting, all you guys, am I wrong in suggesting that the markets actually pay attention to who's president, not just what they do?
You want me to go first? Or?
Yeah, go first.
Well, here's what I would say, and I want to be objective and fair to President Trump. Everything you just said is true about the optics, perception of him as a business person. And also, remember, I was on his economics transition team. And so I was part of the decision making process, staff treasury, pick Clayton for the SEC chair, et cetera. And there was always a mindfulness about pragmatism and what is best for the economy and growing businesses. The Biden administration has not done that. Okay, so the Biden administration has been more focused on wokeness. They've been more focused on perception. The fact that they were revoking energy licenses and drilling licenses in the United States when we have an energy crisis, it's just nonsensical because they're asking the Saudis for the oil. We're all living on the planet. You mentioned Jack Kennedy. He gave a great speech in June of 1963. Said, hey, guys, we're all breathing the same air. We're all drinking the same water. So if the Saudis are drilling, it's affecting the environment the same way it would be if we're drilling in West Texas. So I don't get the whole Biden administration perception thing that they're doing, the wokeness thing that they're doing. I think it's very tiresome to the average American. And so the best thing that he has going for him, though, is Trump hatred. There's widespread Trump hatred in the marketplace. And so even though he was good on certain things, he's just not a great leader. He doesn't have any executive management skills. He went after the democracy. Okay, everyone on this call is the product of an immigrant family, and you need a decentralized government. You don't want an autocracy. The guy went hard at the democracy. He's the first president in the modern era that didn't show up at the inauguration. His administration did not help on the transition. This is an unsportsmanlike guy. It doesn't fit in. So my message to people, I'm a lifelong Republican, conservative Republican. We have better messengers for that movement. You could take a Ron DeSantis, a Nikki Haley, a Mike Pompeo. You pick the candidate. They are a way better messenger. They are less hated. They're less divisive. And they actually believe in the rule of law and the separation of the powers and the U.S. Constitution, you know?
And when you talk about somebody like Mike, Anthony, who I've had the pleasure of getting to know through some business stuff, he's also highly respected on the international stage, whereas Trump has zero credibility.
He's first of all, he's very smart. He's run a business, as you know. He's worked at the CIA. He's been the Secretary of State. He is practical. He's patriotic. And he would create the policies that you like without all the baggage and all the nonsense and the BS. You know, you don't need the president of the United States going after people personally. You know, now he stopped when, you know, he was coming after me, but then, you know, I got nicknames too. Once I told him I met with Stormy and my nickname for him is Tiny Trump, and let me put my hand out there. Once I said that, because we know that's true, because you just the way he operates with the hyper masculinity and you know, the orange war paint and the yellow hair dye and, you know, the orange and the heels. I mean, the guy's wearing 2.5-inch heels. So, you know, all of this hyper masculinity. Once I said to quote LoPresti, una poca piscadell, once we told everybody that, then the fight stopped. You know, because you don't want a bully to be the president of the United States. You want someone tough and you want someone fair, but you also want somebody that actually loves people. Mike Pompeo loves people. Okay. And he's tough, went to West Point. He's all the things that Trump wishes that he was. So, yes, I get it, but I would rather go with a Pompeo, a DeSantis, who was in the Navy, Harvard Law School, Yale, running the state of Florida brilliantly. You know, I don't know why we need Trump.
I think we're going to get, I could see DeSantis and Nikki Haley as a ticket, which would be
No,
very powerful.
I think Trump is going to win that nomination if
You
they
do?
don't do what Mitt Romney said today. He's going to win that nomination. Okay, all these egomaniacs to drop the ego, draw straws, pick one guy or woman versus Trump, and then they'll beat him in the primary. But if you have 26 people on that stage, Trump has galvanized a movement around him. He's also the orange wrecking ball. Okay, he'll say stuff to those people on that stage that will frighten and emasculate most of them, and they don't know how to respond to it. But trust me, one cute, good nickname, and the guy shut up on Twitter like in 14 seconds. Okay. Once we brought up TT for Tiny Trump, that was it. We didn't hear another word from the guy.
Anthony's gone full blown Italian at this point, LoPresti.
Look, I just, I'm not entirely sure that was a precisely accurate quote. I think that might have been the sanitized version. But I have to.
It was the sanitized version. It's like a radio show.
For 15 seconds, I got to tell a Scaramucci Trump story. So I'm standing in Anthony's office in New York City right around the time that Anthony decided that he was going to officially throw his support behind Joe Biden. And the only time I saw somebody's phone ring as many times as Trump was calling Anthony was when I didn't call my high school prom date back the next day. I think your phone must have rung about 35 times that. Do you remember that day?
Yeah, I didn't answer it. I didn't answer it. No, because come on. The guy, come on, guys. The guy's nuts. I was at my daughter was singing with Andrea Bocelli last night. I'm sorry for the brag about that, but I'm just so proud of her. And I was with a group of Italians in South Florida, which they've invaded South Florida. Now they're all from Brooklyn and the Bronx, and they're all sitting there in South Florida. And one of my old clients is in love with Trump. I'm like, dude, the guy is goo-goots. He's tutte pots. Okay, he's nuts. Okay, you don't need. Let's pick somebody else. And by the way, that's probably the one guy that the 400-year-old Joe Biden could beat is Donald Trump. I don't think he could beat Mike Pompeo. I don't think he could beat Nikki Haley or Ron DeSantis. But I do think he could beat orange-faced Trump. I do think so, because he is so hated outside of his little band of caballeros. Alex likes the fact that we're talking about this and not Ethereum. Look how happy he is. Look at him, so happy.
This is the best show ever.
I just hope you're wrong, Anthony, that he could win in a crowded field. I know why you say that, and I get how strong his base is.
Trust me, my bro. I want to be wrong on that, like you cannot believe. I want to be so wrong on that. I want this guy to be irrelevant. I was hoping they would have made money on Truth Social or that stupid SPAC or something, because Trump is only focused on two things: it's money and attention. He didn't like the job. He didn't even like the job. Ask General Kelly or anybody. Ask Mike. Ask Pompeo if Trump liked the job. He liked the attention and that's it. So he's about money and attention. Let's get him back focused on money. I would prefer him in that position.
Well, I have to say it's a great combo to have. And honestly, at the end of the day, for me, the question I look at is how does this, if just dragging it back for a minute to the market space. And by the way, Anthony, I think when you were in that public position, why I said I liked it when I first saw it on the news was, and I didn't know you, I was like, we need people who speak their mind. And I wish we had more leadership in Washington, both in the elected officials and in the people right under them, who would be a lot more transparent. I think if we had that, it would be better. If the press secretary literally wasn't like a pathetic microphone, and if the president actually said things off script, even if I know Trump did sometimes, but a president who actually wants to unify the country, I think it would be really good for us.
I'm with you. I agree with you.
So last thing I want to touch on is your show, Open Book. You're bringing people on. I saw parts of the Cuomo convo, which I loved. It was honest. It was raw. He put himself right out there. He's a controversial guy, but I loved how he's like, listen, I'm pretty effed up in a lot of ways. Like, it was honest. And I'm guessing that's the idea of the show, is to let people kind of see a little more inside who well-known people are and where they get there.
Yeah, listen, it's a double entendre, because it's about books, but it's also about being an open book, and so I want to interview people that are willing to express that vulnerability. And so, the New York Post, of course, they hate Chris. And so they took like one snippet where he said he was going to kill himself and kill everybody. But I mean, that's so Italian. LoPresti knows that's so Italian. How many times I said I was going to blow the house up and stuff like that? I mean, that's what Italians say to each other. And then they move on, but the Post had to make it like he was like homicidal and suicidal, which of course he wasn't. He was just describing dramatically the pain that he was in when he got fired. And it was a very real, very authentic conversation. And so I'm proud to be one of Chris's friends. I think he's a great guy, and I have a lot of love and respect for him, and I want him to do incredibly well.
Awesome. Well, I want your show to do incredibly well.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Love having you on here. You are welcome. Love to have you come back and periodically jump in with us.
Anytime. All right. Hopefully you'll have me on at least 11 times. Okay. Which will
okay, that's the rule.
fit with the other elements of my career.
We need you on 11 shows for allow it to actually, count. Anthony Scaramucci, thank you for coming on Bulls, Bears, and Blockchain. This has been a lot of fun. You can check out Anthony's podcast, Open Book. It's on all streaming platforms. And go to revolutionradio.io to check out more behind-the-scenes stuff and added content, as well as our B3 index. And to all you listeners out there, I hope you're enjoying Bulls, Bears, and Blockchain. And if you are, please give us a review on either Spotify or iTunes and share it with your friends. We want to get as many people in the Bulls, Bears, and Blockchain community as we can. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Have a great day.
Today's episode of Bulls, Bears, and Blockchain is proudly brought to you by Verijet, the only solution for short-haul private aviation. To learn more, go to verijet.com, and we'll see you in the clouds.
My podcast comes out every Friday. It's called Open Book. It's available where podcasts are available, including Apple, Spotify, etc., all the great places. We interview authors. We don't announce that until the Friday of the show, so I actually don't even know who's on at this moment. But it's Fridays, Open Book, and it's a 45-minute treat with somebody smart who wants to be authentic for 45 straight minutes.
Thanks for joining Rob Nelson, Alex Mascioli, Marc LoPresti, and John Najarian with another great episode of Bulls, Bears, and Blockchain, twice a week on Revolution Radio. Whether you're new to the world of Web3 finance or an experienced investor, we've got you covered. Follow us on Twitter at GetRevRadio and visit our website at revolutionradio.io, helping you make smarter financial decisions.